Okay, so don't you guys just hate those socially awkward moments that we often tend to encounter ourselves with? So I'm talking about those moments when you're waving back at someone and you think they're waving at you, but in reality they're not waving at you, they're waving at someone else. Or when you're getting to know someone barely and you encounter yourself with them and you're just like, well, how do I greet you? Do I give you a handshake? Do I hug you? Is that too much? You don't know. Or hugging someone of a vastly different height of you and you're just really awkwardly hugging them. It's just okay. So I've always found it interesting to learn about different countries and their cultural norms. And I've also experienced many situations with greeting people that have been very awkward. So, and I'm pretty sure that many of you guys can relate to them. So for my speech, I will be comparing the greeting etiquette established in the United States to those in countries such as Japan, Thailand, and France. I will be talking about this in terms of how to greet, how the greeting is performed, and the meaning and value behind it. So to start off, let's begin with talking about how we greet here in the U.S. So typically you shake hands here when you meet someone, and it's also very common to say, hi, how are you doing? Or even a hug is acceptable, but that's more of when you're close to a friend or a family member. So the meaning behind it. Giving a handshake to someone is a polite way of introducing yourself and acknowledging the person whom you're greeting. It's a way this is a respectable way of greeting Americans. A magazine by the name of Foreigner magazine mentions that as Americans, we enjoy our personal space, and I think that many of us can agree with that. So just like in the United States, people greet by giving handshakes in other countries too. The second country I'll be talking about and comparing the US to is Thailand. So people in Thailand will often accept handshakes from foreigners. However, the preferred and most respectable way of greeting people is known as Lai. So according to the etiquette in Thailand, written by Reach to Teaching Adventures Abroad, the typical Thai greeting is called Wai and involves pressing your palms together and bowing your head slightly. So the meaning behind it. The Wai is a sign of respect and a common way of greeting. Respect and courtesy is presented by the height of which the hands are held and by how low the head comes to meet the thumbs of both hands. Thai culture is strongly hierarchical, so respect must be given to those of higher status, and a person's social status also determines how they should be greeted. So just like we Americans like our personal space, it's also not common to touch someone's hands when greeting them. Typically, the person of lower status will offer this greeting, and people of higher status aren't required to return the greeting, but it is considered rude. Similar to bowing in Thailand, bowing is also a form of greeting in other countries. So the next country I'll be talking about is Japan. So basic bows are usually done with a straight back with basic bows are usually done with a straight back with hands at the side for men or clasped in the lap for women with the eyes looking down as you bow. So according to a Japanese friend of mine, I have many Japanese friends, and something interesting I learned about them was that the greeting, the deeper and longer the bow is, the more respect it is towards the person you're greeting. So bows can generally be classified into three types, which would be informal, formal, and then very formal. So the most casual bow is generally bent at about 15 degrees, and this is the common bow you give to people when you're passing by, and you're just oh hi, you know. The second bow is usually used in business interactions, and it's used when entering or leaving reception rooms or when greeting customers. The most polite bow also consists of lowering the torso about 45 degrees, and it's usually used to express feeling of deep gratitude or sometimes even apology. So the last country I will be talking about is France. So rather than shaking hands like in the US, bowing or even hugging, The acceptable way of greeting someone is by leaning forward, touching cheeks, and kissing the air near the other person's cheek. So some people refer to it here as an air kiss, and there are important situations when you should air kiss people. Something that people often worry about is like when to kiss them or how, and like how many kisses to give them. So also hugging is an option with close friends, but it's not very common. So the meaning behind it, so air kissing is a gesture of friendship. It's seen as an acceptable way of greeting and giving those people a sense that you're acknowledging their presence. Therefore, it can be between friends and acquaintances, or of any gender combination, particularly two women or a woman and a man. So just remember that if you guys ever greet someone in France, you might think that kissing is awkward, but remember that for them, hugging is kind of too intimate too. So up to this point, we've talked about the way we greet in the United States, its meaning behind it. We've also covered the typical greeting in Thailand known as wai, bowing in Japan, and lastly, air kissing in France. Now, if any of you plan on traveling to any of these countries, you now have an understanding of how to greet, and hopefully won't encounter yourselves with yet another awkward greeting.
All right, Leslie, what did you think?
All right, so I thought your topic was really interesting. I thought your attention getter in the beginning totally fit with what you're talking about. Like, it totally makes sense. Your thesis was there. It was obvious. Your preview was good. I was kind of confused at first because I didn't know you were going to go by country, but then once you started doing that, it makes sense. You talked a little fast sometimes, so I really had to like watch you to know what you were talking about. And you said a lot, but that's just kind of like my little picky thing. And your conclusion was really good. You went over everything again, and yeah, I thought you did really good.
All right, thank you. I like the rhetorical question and the kind of reference to the awkward examples and experiences. You had some interesting visualizations as an attention device. I thought your purpose statement was very clearly identified, and you had a good transition to that. The preview needed to be a little bit more detailed. I knew the general direction you were going in because you were going to do some comparisons. It might have been appropriate to maybe talk about the countries and mention those as the way in which you're going to be structuring things. The material itself, I think, needs a little bit more citation when it comes to information. I heard a couple in the first section of the speech, but after that, it was a little bit less consistent. And so you want to make sure that we know why it is you know the things that you know and where it is that you got that information. You know, the background information about Americans and handshaking is pretty straightforward. The cultural differences between the other countries, I think, were explained a little bit, but I do know that you probably, like I said, did some research to get some reason why those differences exist, and I think that that needed to be in the speech a little bit more. I'm not a great speller, and I'm listening to it, and in Thailand it's a Y. I'm writing down W and I don't think that that's the way it's spelled at all. And you made reference to it 2 or 3 times in the speech. And just out of curiosity, to satisfy that, it might have been a good idea to go ahead and put the word on the image that you had also, just so that we would know exactly the way it is spelled and referred to, so that we wouldn't make the mistake of being confused when we met somebody in Thailand and we asked why, and they said, okay, and then they did that. It'd be a little bit strange. The signposts are, I think, they're a little bit rushed and occasionally inelegant, but I knew that you were moving from point to point, which is a good thing. They just need to be smoother. I thought the visuals were very effective. They're simple. They illustrate your points pretty clearly, and so it's easy to understand what you're talking about there. I kind of agree with Leslie. It felt a little bit like you were rushing through the speech, and I think you could pace yourself a little bit more effectively. All right. Thank you much.